guess we'll go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our next YLF committee meeting. First of all, let's do some member introductions. We have some members here today that have not been here before. Hi, my name is Valan Deja. I am the chair of the committee. Would you like to do the next one?
I'm Nicole Deja. Nicole Flores.
Carlin Cowser.
Carly Cowser.
Bambi Palazola.
Melissa Bayham.
Vivian, would you like to go next?
I'm Vivian Webb.
Maddie, are you here?
Hey, I'm gonna be in for Maddie for a little while. She's not home from school yet, so
Okay.
she should be here in about an hour, maybe. So,
Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself?
yes, my name is April Young. I am the mother of Madeline Young, and she is a member of the YLF.
Thank you. Jill?
Joe, I know, DDC member at large.
Thank you, Jill. And then last but not least, Pam.
Everyone, I'm Pam Allen. It's great to be with everybody today.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. The first thing that we have on the agenda is the approval of the May 26th meeting summary. Can we share that on the screen? Sure. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Can we have a motion to approve the summary?
I make a motion to approve the summary.
And we would need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any objections or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes, so we've approved our summary. And so the first official thing on our agenda is the recap of Oklahoma's YLF of 2022. Mom and I went to Oklahoma's YLF, I think it was it last month? Mid last month. It was a 5-day program. And we learned a lot from YLF and what this could look like here. Amy, would you mind sharing the YLF takeaways document? Sure. Thank you. So the first thing that I wanted to discuss about YLF was the staffing. I've highlighted a couple of things on this document that are particularly important. We noticed that YLF had a 1-to-1 ratio with staff versus campers. They also had an RN and a CNA, but apparently previously they had night nurses in addition to the 2 daytime nurses, which seems to be really important whenever they had that, because then the nurses during the day had that time to recharge and rest at night. Especially because nurses not only handled medical concerns, but also assisted with things like personal hygiene as well. And we had a lot of campers that did need help with personal hygiene. And so in order to ensure that everyone has the best care possible, it seems like a good idea to simply have, the daytime and nighttime nurses. So those responsibilities can be divvied out appropriately. The staff was also divided equally between alumni and teachers. And so your teachers were more likely to be your able-bodied staff, and your alumni were staff who had previously gone to YLF. The teachers were all special education teachers, which was good in that they had experience in behavioral redirection techniques. And this was useful for maybe some delegates who had some challenging behaviors, but it seemed to produce an imbalance in the roles between the staff and also the delegates. And it seemed to also stem from this hierarchy in the school system of teacher versus student. And so whenever we move forward with our YLF, we need to be careful and really ensure that we have a culture of equality and acceptance. And so I think it's just making sure that we have enough individuals with disabilities on staff and that we have that staff training on the front end of disability culture, disability etiquette, and set the tone for how to interact with each other.
And that was one of the things that I think we were a little short-sighted when we were talking about scheduling here in Louisiana, because we talked about scheduling with the university only for the time that the campers hit the ground, whereas they had 2 days prior to camper or delegate arrival where they did staff training and everyone learned about the delegates that were coming. We did kind of team building exercises. We talked about, and that would be our opportunity to really promote that culture of equality and disability pride and, like, why are we really there? And then again, to learn about everybody's roles. And I think the first couple of years for us will be important to do that because we won't have alumni. We won't have anyone who's worked the event before. So that, because a lot of it was, you guys remember what we did last year, or you guys remember what we used to, we won't have that. So those 2 days prior to when the leaders or delegates get there are going to be super important. So we have to remember that when we're scheduling with the university, that will need to be there, without the campers. So.
And while we are at that disadvantage, like you said, where like in Oklahoma, we had that most of the staff had been there for over 5 years. So they understood the drill, they understood the routine. We do have an opportunity to start with a fresh slate. So I think our pilot year is going to be pretty vital in implementing that disability culture and that culture of equality and balance, really. So I'm going to stop here. Does anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts? I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Lillian, at the top when you mentioned about the nursing staff, that's going to be based on who the delegates are, because you may not need nursing at all. Probably. It could be.
One of their biggest tasks was med management.
Right.
So it was just med distribution. And so they would meet that way. The young adults are not coming back to them. They're meeting them, at whatever activity. That was probably the bulk of their time, was just, making sure that everybody had their meds when they were supposed to have them. And then that personal hygiene. There wasn't a whole lot of medical interventions. There wasn't a whole lot of that. But I think you're right.
I'm just wondering, if it is the personal care, then that doesn't necessarily need to be an RN.
Right. Right.
Now, if there's medication delegation, then you might want to have, the RN there, which there could potentially be that. So that was my only question. I didn't know what you were saying was that you need to have 2 daytime nurses and have a night nurse. You won't really know that until.
They had one individual, she required turning every 2 hours. And they had an instance where the camp, one of the leaders there was assigned that instead of a nurse, and she overslept.
Not leaders and delegates, but leaders and staff members.
Yeah. So it was that sort of thing needs to be we need to make sure but that doesn't necessarily have to be a nurse, so it's somebody that's
responsible.
Yeah. Just make sure that happens and that we have communication between those individuals who may need that assistance, good communication, because she also dropped her phone. So then she couldn't get in touch with anybody, so it was those were good lessons because it happens,
And for instance, at home, she would have an Alexa to call something that happened, but at YLF, the supports weren't there. Ironically enough, the most medically complex person on campus was yours truly, and he helped me out. So, but I guess that'll also depend on what pool we pull from. So if we're recruiting from hospitals, maybe we will have more medically complex leaders versus if we're recruiting from just special education systems or LRS, I mean, we may have just your more static disability.
And I think that that's one of the standards that's set by the association, or the National Association, is that we have a diverse, we follow ADA definition of disability. And we have a diverse group of individuals, that represent all different types of disability. So we definitely don't want to be in a position where we're turning somebody down because, that would be,
I don't think we can.
no, but we want to make sure that we're staffed appropriately.
Yeah. Pam, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Could you remind me how many people in total were at the forum in Oklahoma?
At Oklahoma, I think they had 19 delegates.
Okay.
And so they had about a 1-to-1 ratio of campers and staff.
And that was typical, like, was that smaller than pre-pandemic, or was that about average? Do you know? I'm just curious.
I think it was smaller, not because of COVID restrictions, but because of recruitment challenges after.
Gotcha.
COVID.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think their largest population was 23 though.
Yeah.
So they've never really had a ton more than that.
I mean, 20 doesn't sound like a lot until you get there and they start showing up, and then they keep showing up. And they keep showing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any other comments or questions?
Hey, it's April. The med management, I like what y'all talking about that, because we never talked about that last time, but that is huge. That would limit a lot of staff if it's just med management. And the age group in Oklahoma, was it the same age group as what we were talking about last time?
It will be similar to the age group that we will have, yes.
Okay.
And having a nurse also was really great for emotional support as well, because for a lot of the delegates, this was the first time away from home, first time spending the night away from home without having their normal home supports. And so there were a lot of unexplainable ailments that had no seeming cause. And so, like, for instance, I mean, there was one camper who had continued complaints about pain in his foot with no explainable reason. And so you could send them to the nurse and say, okay, Nurse Rachel can give you some Tylenol, and they just may need a little bit more taxing and specific medical attention that's not necessarily from your normal staff that isn't a nurse. And so you can have that extra reassurance that you have that extra support there in the form of a nurse.
Lillian too, for Lions Camp, when Maddie went this summer, they had pharmacy interns that helped give out medications. They had the nurse, and then they pre-packaged all the campers' medication. So which saved so much other people. So like it was pharmacy interns, and they had a blast. So that might be something that may be free, that may need a certain amount of hours.
Yeah, it may be that we have a pharmacy intern, RN, chief of attorney, RN, and CNA.
Yeah.
There's a pharmacy program that you all know that's really good. That might be a resource to consider.
Well, if anyone knows of any pharmacy interns, send them our way. So our next section is about staff training. So at YLF,
I think Jill has her.
Oh. Jill, sorry.
We might want to reach out to Xavier University for the pharmacy interns, because that's a big pharmacy school.
I'm writing all this down. Thank you, Jill.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? So with the staff training at YLF, staff arrived 2 days prior to the delegates. This actually, at first, whichever, I know when Mom and I saw that it was 2 full days of staff training, it felt like overkill until we started going through the staff training. And it really allowed for team building, a thorough review of policies in the week ahead, a review of like the specific needs of the delegates, and also rapport building between the staff. Because with a camp like this, communication needs to be impeccable. Staff needs to work like a well-oiled machine in order to take care of everyone in the fashion that they need to be taken care of, and supported so they can be as independent as possible as well. So I think it's important that, like we mentioned earlier, that we schedule at least 1 full, very full day of staff training on the front end, so we can be prepared for our first YLF, and so we can implement that culture and that knowledge.
I'm gonna suggest 2 days, because if we just went to a program that's been running 19 years and they still do 2 days of staff training, it also allowed for them to get prepared, doing things like they had a dance and a talent show. So it was the staff's responsibility to paint signs, just like these motivational kind of like, we're so excited you're here, and then the dance signs. And it was just this really cool build up to the people of the hour. And they just kept saying, we're so excited, we can't wait till they get here. And this was repeated over and over. And so there's this huge buildup for when these young adults get there, and it's like the celebrities show up. And when they hit that door, it really felt like a red carpet event where it was like, you're here. And the kids and the parents walked into just this huge fanfare. And it wasn't cake. It was like this 2-day buildup of this is the big event.
Yeah.
And the energy and everything that went into it. But at that time, everyone had developed a rapport amongst themselves. And I think what I was not prepared for was the social emotional aspect on us, and managing some of the things that they come to camp with, and some of their experiences, and some of the challenges that present in this setting because they are away from home for the first time.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting. This may be an obvious question. Where are the staff going to come from? Or I'm at,
We're working on that.
okay. I was just curious. I don't know if you're going to look for volunteers, how it's going to work. I'll volunteer, but I think you'll have a lot of people who probably will want to.
Yeah.
I know the UL Life program has offered like mentors and do their program, which will be phenomenal to have individuals who are already experienced with disability, especially adults with disabilities. But as far as the staff piece, that will definitely be a long-term project.
I was just curious if I had missed that, because I knew I had missed the last meeting.
Jill, I see your hand is raised.
Miss Nicole, since you said that this is their 19th YLF, then and they needed 2 days since this is our inaugural YLF. Would it be like 3 days or 2.5 days?
That'll be up to everybody. I think that we don't want to, I guess the challenge would be that we don't want to, because we're going to be running on volunteers initially. So how much time what's the time burden on the volunteer versus the offset of, okay, we're fully prepared. Like we've got this rapport, we're fully prepared. So I think it's worth a conversation, Jill, totally. Because I don't, this is just my opinion from what we saw over there, that I don't think we should shortchange ourselves on staff training. And maybe it's a thing where we build up, we don't have to do all the training right there on the ground, we do
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe
or,
a week before.
yeah,
or
like
something.
we have some little intercessions leading up to it. I don't know. I think
Even for something like this, especially since it's the first time, like, there's gonna be some, like, depth, like, orientation and icebreakers, and like get to know each other, and some stuff we're gonna have to do, pay more attention to detail simply because it's the first run.
I agree, Joe, 100%.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments, good jokes? And we have a mock schedule to review later in our committee meeting, which includes a staff training.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about your little mock schedule later.
Jill's got some comments coming up later.
Jill, I feel like I should be worried. I feel ominous.
You should.
Wait, no, I know why you couldn't be assumed. Yeah,
What?
so we don't have to fight in the parking lot. That's why you shouldn't be assumed.
I don't know who would win. Like,
Okay, see, we have the Sharon Galvisco raised her hand.
I saw it and then it went down. I'm not sure if she's still, if it was a mistake or if.
We're getting some really bad weather in our area, so we may get kicked off.
Okay, so any more comments, questions? Excluding threats from Jill? Okay. So the next thing that we have is about the delegates, or what we'll call leaders, which will be definitely something that we need to actively discuss, because this year YLF had about 20 delegates in attendance. They've been running their forum for 20 years, 20 years. We projected accepting 15 leaders or delegates into our program for our pilot year. I would actually suggest shrinking that number, because even throughout the forum, I believe 3 delegates had to leave for family reasons during the forum, and even 17, 18 was a lot for the staff, even with a 1-to-1 ratio and it being their 19th or 20th year. So I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on that.
So I guess just like play devil's advocate, the D council is given $30,000 for 3 days. You divide it, that's $10,000 a day. If it's with 15 people, that's what you calculate, I don't know if my math is right, 666 a day per person is what the cost that we're investing. If we shrink down to 10, you say $10,000 a day, that's $1,000 per day per delegate. And so I think that probably my math isn't right. Like I'm not looking at the other costs. So I think that needs to be explained to the council of what the startup cost is. I think there'll be startup things that you may have this first or second year that you might not have some developments of training and that type of thing that
And wouldn't that cost be distributed too? Because you're gonna have your staff there for your staff training. So you're gonna have potentially two front-end days with your.
what I'm saying is you're taking the entire, what you're getting out of it for the leaders is 3 days. Like you can have people there a month, like, but that's all your cost of what you're actually giving, their cost of what they're getting for 3 days is what I'm saying. So now, unless there's other things that's going to be happening afterwards, which we did talk about that. So maybe the 30,000 is going to go to, monthly activities that are gonna be ongoing. I don't know, but I think that needs to, it's not just 3 days with 10 people and it's costing $1,000 a day per person. Like that seems, I can
It's
imagine.
the
people going,
development, the materials, putting it all together, the marketing, getting the startup, and then, the surveys after, those initial startup costs that you.
Mhm.
So are you saying that we should leave the number at 15 or that we should?
No, I'm saying there needs to be a better explanation.
Yeah,
Okay.
the distribution of funds, gotcha.
Of why,
Yeah.
why are you spending $1,000 a day per person? You need to explain, well, it's not really that. We had to do this, this, and this, and afterwards, we're gonna do
Yeah.
follow-up and
Uh-huh.
development and that type of thing. So I think that's I think the council would
Yeah.
ask those type of questions.
So the other thing as well is, with the YLF, in order to get good quality speakers, I think we'll definitely be paying some money for that.
Yeah.
Public speaking fees, as a lot of us know, are pretty hefty. And there's some individuals who we may want to fly in for our YLF, so we can have that good quality, impactful YLF. Do we need to be paying $10,000 per speaker for 1 hour? No, but I think we definitely will have those costs. In order to have a good forum, including, those pre and post surveys like you mentioned, speakers, lodging and meals for staff. and
Blessings of
campers,
capital.
Blessings. There's a lot of little pieces here and there.
It's gonna be 3 days.
3 days with campers.
And how many hours per day?
500.
No,
They hit the lobby at 7:30 and didn't hit the lobby until 10:30. It was full.
It was a
And they
very
did
full
fine.
day.
I'm just trying to figure out, typically we pay $50 per unit for pre-employment transition services. So I was gonna multiply the number of hours by the 50. And plus we can pay the room and board for the,
Makes sense. And we can review Lillian's little mock schedule and she'll call them later too. But
So are you gonna, but you're talking about going to Baton Rouge, so one day's going to Baton Rouge, so there's only like 2 days of.
yes,
Well, okay, 'cause that's gonna be,
okay.
that's a.
Oh, so you're gonna have transportation costs as well.
and the way they did it too is, like, for instance, for Capitol Day, they did have some sessions at the Capitol. So like their AT session was just hosted at, a Capitol meeting room.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be all Capitol Day events on Capitol Day. We can also do some YLF things just while we're there. Especially if we're planning on hosting our YLF outside of session, that will give us that opportunity.
Yeah, they did a thing where everybody ate. Okay, so they got on the bus, they ate breakfast a bag breakfast on the bus. We got there, we had a room where they kind of worked on their mock bill, their argument, because they brought them to the floor to argue a mock bill and vote and do all that stuff. So we had a pro side and a con side to the mock bill that they had, sent ahead of time. But like Lillian said, in that room, one of the guest speakers came and presented about assistive technology. So it wasn't a capital or a legislative type session. It was just YLF kind of stuff. And then from there, they went to the floor. We actually ate lunch in that room. We went to the floor, they argued and, their bill and voted and did that. And then once that was done, we left the Capitol and we went to their state library, state museum library, because their DD council funded a history of disability community in Oklahoma, like full exhibit. So we got to go. So that was a very full day. And that evening we came back and did like s'mores and stuff like that. It was a very, 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 every day was very, very full.
And I know this is probably why, Jill's kind of suspicious about my schedule with it being as full as it is. However, there actually was a purpose of having such a full schedule outside of getting everything done. Because this was the first time many of the delegates or leaders were away from home, like Mom and I have mentioned, in passing, there was a huge socio-emotional aspect to this. And so having such a busy schedule also helps prevent some homesickness and some of those socio-emotional repercussions from being away from home. And so we could have, so our delegates could have the most productive and fruitful time there. It was important to see about that socio-emotional aspect, but part of seeing about that socio-emotional aspect was having that busy schedule. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm away from home, but I'm away from home and I get to do these really cool things with new friends and have all these new experiences without kind of starting to think about, oh, I'm away from mom, I'm alone, it's a new place, right? Because that is a reality for our delegates, but that busy schedule, it didn't prevent all the issues by any stretch, but it did help. It really did. And no one got up in the middle of the night and snuck out because everyone was too exhausted.
I was
to do
actually
so.
just thinking about that. That's why summer camps are designed that way, because they typically are very busy and they're too tired to do anything bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lillian, that's what Maddie was saying at the last meeting for Lions Camp. It's like 7:30 in the morning
Yeah.
to 10 o'clock at night. And I asked her if she missed home at all that week. She said no, because they didn't have time
Yeah.
to miss home. You know, even when they went to bed, they were so exhausted that you got up and you did it again.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to leave, pretty much, is when, but yeah.
Lynette has her hand up.
All right, Lynette, I see your hand is raised.
Can you hear her?
Yes.
Okay. She said that she'd be glad to go talk for free.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah. Yes. She said yes.
One of the coolest parts about YLF is that all the speakers should be people with disabilities. That's in the national standards. So we definitely need lots of people with disabilities to help speak at our YLF.
You have done it before. Oh yeah, she's done it many times before for different camps and retreats and stuff. You've done it for that before? She said she did for this before too. More than once.
Lynette been around for a while.
Yeah. This is telling her age, huh? Not only hers, but her mom as well.
We don't have to talk about your age anymore.
No.
Thank you, Lynette. Do you have any other comments, questions, thoughts?
I would suggest that you suggested lowering the number of delegates down from 15. Would you make that a concrete number for moving forward with?
Thank you for reminding me about that, because I completely forgot that was something that we needed to do. So what is everyone's thoughts about shrinking the number of our leaders for our pilot year?
And I'll say this, at the very least, we need to have an even number because of the way dorm rooms are set up.
Yes.
So we don't have a leader that's, by themselves in a room. We want them to have that companionship, and that friendship, even when they go back to their room at night or in the morning.
Yeah, and it made sense to shrink the number a little bit, especially for the pilot year. To see as we try everything out.
Here's my other concern about possibly taking on our previously proposed 15 delegates or leaders, as we're going to be calling them, is we need our first year to go smooth. Simply because this is our pilot year, people will be watching, and we want to bring good news back to our funding sources and say we did a really good thing and it was really successful, and hopefully we can move forward with subsequent years. So I would almost prefer to be safer than sorry, with a smaller number of delegates, so we can make sure everyone is supported in the way that they need to, the staff that doesn't have prior experience with YLF.
Yeah, I agree, Lillian, but I do want to say, and I'm glad you're preparing so much. It's not going to be perfect. And I don't think your funding sources are going to be upset about that. I mean, I think everyone here sees what a great job you're doing with leading this. There are going to be hiccups, and it's okay.
Oklahoma's suggestion to us was that we end the week with the same number of delegates we started with. First year, they said that should be your only standard. And it was like, we're gonna try to shoot a little higher than that, but that was really, I mean, they were just kind of like, it's rough.
I just don't want you to think if they have some problems that occur that, you know, that it was a bit, no, I mean, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. And really, I mean, the goal is to start with the same number of delegates in the beginning of the week to the end. And I just think that maybe shrinking the amount of delegates can help us accomplish that goal
Yeah.
easier. Pam, I see you have your hand raised.
So quick question, did they have a waiting list? Like say we say we're gonna have 14 delegates or whatever our ultimate number is. Did they keep a waiting list in case, I know that sometimes things happen, or did they just, once the number was selected, they, if 2 people couldn't come for some reason, they didn't fill those spots? Is there any, because if there's a medical issue or I don't know, things happen last minute, or sometimes I just wondered if when we set our final number, would we try to fill it with alternates if that was an option, or would we just stick with what we got?
That's a good point. Mom just brought up that they said the staff at YLF said they don't have a waiting list. I do know in other YLFs across the country, they are more selective about the delegates that they take on. I'm just using the term delegates because that's the most common terminology for campers across the country for YLFs. Because they do have those qualifications from the National Association for YLFs I need to be able to demonstrate leadership abilities and a couple of other, least qualifications. So sometimes some YLFs do select a specific group of delegates and just stick with that. And then there are some applicants that aren't necessarily selected for YLF, but for Oklahoma, they don't turn anyone away. So it just depends on the state.
Okay, thank you.
Lynette, is your hand raised from earlier or do you have a new comment?
You think L P S less people less. How do I get it? How would it go? I think less, she said.
Thank you, Lynette.
Wait. You're on now? Is she on now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry.
Lillian, just for clarification, you said they don't turn anyone away. So that means you said they're 19. So that's how many people applied? If they have 27, they accept everybody. I mean, I
think they originally had 21 and then one person back out before the forum, and then I think 2 left during the forum due to family issues that they needed to go home for. But otherwise, I think they accepted everyone.
Maybe because it fit their capacity. I see what you're saying,
because you can't say that, because you
Yeah.
have 40 people apply.
yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
you have to.
Lynette?
She's agreeing.
Oh,
Yeah, too, about not having that waiting list, because there will be some attrition before you even get there.
So at a certain point, maybe you could feel, but after a certain point, then you can't plan for changes. Maybe
And
that
they-
could be.
Now, they did an interview process too, where they applied, they're recommended, there's got to be a letter of recommendation demonstrating that they've shown some leadership skills. And then there's an interview with the delegate and the parents. So at least that's how Oklahoma does it. They've vetted, the delegates fairly well, but I think you're right. I think we can't just open up the floodgates.
it was good too to have those pre-interviews as well, because once the delegates got there, they were able to identify the staff members that they had met via Zoom. So there was someone at the firm that they are. But that's a different. I see another person.
Rhonda Quilly is her hand.
Okay. Karanda, your hand is raised.
Great afternoon. I was inquiring on what is going to be the rubrics or criteria in regards to selecting the actual delegates that would be attending. Number two, how would we be disseminating information out? Because even as I'm watching this meeting, I'm noticing that it's not very diverse as it relates to culture, race, ethnicity. But in addition to that, will we be ensuring that information such as the Brandy Melissa Act will be taught to the individuals that will be attending, considering that that's a new law that just got signed in today by our governor? So I'm asking that question, and last but definitely not least, can we please have the chat disabled so that members of the public can actually put their questions in the chat? Thank you.
So from what I'm hearing, there was 3 questions in that comment, and one was pertaining to recruitment. Recruitment is a step that we have not taken yet because we're not there in the planning process, but my projection for recruitment will probably be through the school systems and LRS and DOE and our various state agencies who have that reach within the disability community, and perhaps, your FHF centers across the state. I am speaking for agencies that I am not a part of, so that's not concrete, but that would be the idea, as that's how other YLFs across the country handle it. Dissemination of information as far as that was regarding the schedule, right?
I think so.
Okay, so dissemination of
Or maybe how you get the word out.
how you get the word out would likely be similarly through the various state agencies who do have the pulse on the disability community. And as far as the schedule of what will be taught at the YLFs, we'll probably be pulling ideas from other YLFs across the country, as they have been doing this, for years now. There will be a legislative session, since we will have Capital Day at YLFs. And so we will be going over, pertinent laws of the disability community. So our delegates will be prepared. And as far as the chat, that will be up to the council staff.
I don't know why it's disabled, so.
If I could say too, also from what I've seen, all of the YLF programs seem to stress diversity as an imperative for every program.
Jill, I see you have your hand raised.
Miss Carando, what law just got passed?
Yes, that's the Brandy Melissa Act. As everyone knows, Brandy Melissa is a part of our DD community, and she is a self-advocate, and the law is named after her. And it's in regards to individuals with eating disorders to actually have the information disseminated out and educating individuals regardless of disability or ability in regards to different eating disorders and how to actually get help and treatment. So it's a great day for individuals with disabilities for us to have a law signed today by one of our very own self-advocates.
Do you know the specific act number?
Yeah, I can put it for you in the chat if the chat is disabled. As soon as they disable the chat, I'll put it in there for you.
Lynette, is your hand raised from earlier, or do you have a new comment?
Sorry, we didn't hear.
Is your hand raised from earlier, or do you have a new comment?
It's okay. She said it's okay.
Awesome, thanks, Lynette. So what do you guys think about maybe shrinking our delegate number to something like 12? So it's kind of a happy medium. We do have a quorum. So would someone want to make a motion to?
I don't know if I can do it for Maddie or not, but I think that's 12 is good.
I don't think you can make a motion, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. Would anyone be willing to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to change the number of initial delegates to 12.
Okay, do we have a second?
Jill's raising her hand online.
Okay, Jill seconds the motion, correct, Jill? You're seconding?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Do we have any objections or extensions to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. So the next,
Can we go back? I just wanted to reiterate a point that Karanda Corley made in regards to like racial representation. We have to do like set the culture better than just what our committee is, because I'm looking at it, I don't think there's any person of color. And I think that our delegates need to represent the culture of our state, which is at least a third African American, and that's not even counting other minorities. And so I don't think we can do that if we don't have people making the decision on the front end. We're not gonna be successful. So I think that really needs to be like a charge for this committee going forward, is that we recruit people of color. And also we need to have more self-advocates engaged in this. So that's my recommendation for the committee.
absolutely. I think those are excellent points. I think the biggest barrier that we've had is recruiting members for the YLF committee that actively participate and come to meetings consistently. Because some of the barriers that we've had historically behind the scenes with this committee is not reaching quorum, because we've had some members who wouldn't, show up. And so that impacts our ability to function as a committee whenever we don't have that quorum, because we can't make those motions. So moving forward, absolutely, we need more self-advocates and people of color.
But self-advocates, they could get an ADA accommodation and participate virtually.
I have a suggestion. Now that school just started, can you guys maybe reach out to the school's counselors or the special ed teachers or something of an email to recruit self-advocates?
We absolutely could do that. If we could have some members of the committee that would be, willing to do some of that work on their end, that would be phenomenal. I'm a little overloaded with YLF work right now, and other responsibilities, but I think that's a general idea.
Because I know a lot of, especially the 15 on up age, that's a transition age, and they do meet with the counselors to start talking about college or technical school, and maybe that's something that can also be incorporated and say, hey, look, this is a great idea, so on and so forth. And, just a thought.
Absolutely. So if I can lean on you guys as a committee to maybe keep your eyes peeled for any self-advocates, specifically people of color, or even reaching out to those counselors at schools, that would be phenomenal. Because this is something that I think would best be accomplished if we work together on. I think Charlie had his hand raised, right?
Yes.
Okay, Charlie?
Okay.
I think you muted yourself.
I might have muted him. Sorry about that.
Uh-oh.
But okay.
Did y'all hear any of that?
Now.
Okay, somebody muted. Okay. Okay, what I was saying is because y'all are at such a critical juncture with all the work and all trying to get all this off the ground, if y'all could narrow it down to one task and just do some sort of an informational flyer or brochure or something that says you're looking for membership that include people with preference given to people of color, self-advocates. If you sent that to the Families Helping Families directors, we could send it out to the special ed directors in our region, ask them to share it with the counselors and the administrators and teachers or whomever they would. Then we would probably be able to field some of those questions for you. And if we get a question we can't answer, then we can refer those people to y'all. Maybe cut some of that off of your plate.
That'd be phenomenal.
It's a great idea.
Thank you. Was worth muting me twice for it? Good job. All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah. And if while I'm unmuted, let me ask you this. I just got onto the meeting, so y'all may have covered this already. But because this is a youth leadership forum and it's going to involve youth, and someone just mentioned schools just started, have y'all considered moving the meetings later so that students didn't have to miss school for it?
We definitely need to start thinking about that. Thank you.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I was going to mention it too.
Because with the seat time requirements for credits, most of your membership that's from the school system would be in high school, and seat time is mandatory for those credits. And while this is a very valuable tool and a very valuable activity, it looks good on a resume, it's going to make big differences for people. I don't think we want to jeopardize their diploma for it.
Thank you, Charlie. I see the next. I see Jill, you have your hand raised.
What about if we sent an LADDC newsletter out to specifically recruit for this committee?
Oh, was that to me? Sure.
Yes.
I think so.
As soon as
Yes,
as
ma'am.
the committee gets that information together, we can send it out.
Oh, okay.
Who else has it?
Thank you.
Coranda Corley and Lynette.
Okay. Coranda, I see that you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I would like to piggyback off of what Ms. Haino and Dr. Michelle both stated. I think if we have a definitive date and time, that would make it easy for our self-advocates, because a lot of them depend like consistency. And so giving them a consistent date with a consistent time would actually be beneficial. But also, besides using our Families Helping Families and doing a newsletter like GOTA does, we can also use our human service districts as well as the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. We do know that each and every last one of them disseminate information out in a major way to our individuals with disabilities. So let's use them. Also, I know that groups that are not normally used is that the Latino Commission, as well as the NAACP and MUSON, that actually deal with other diverse communities that would actually allow individuals with disabilities themselves to actually be able to try to sit on this committee. And last but definitely not least, because the chat wasn't disabled, I wanted to give Ms. Hayno and everyone the act number, which is Act 626, which is now the Brandy Melissa Act. But it's Act number 626.
Thank you. Lynette, you have your hand raised?
You have a question? Yes.
I would.
Hold on one sec. Touch it. Say it. Okay. She said I can say it. Can I be on the committee officially?
Okay.
Can I officially be on the committee?
Yeah, I'll make that happen with that. Okay, so our next section, now that we have shrunk our number of delegates to 12 officially. I'm gonna run through these a little bit quickly because I know we're halfway through our allotted meeting time. So one thing that was really useful during the OKYLF forum was the shirt colors, actually. They had a binary color shirt system where the delegates were quote unquote yellow shirts and staff members were gray shirts. These colors were used to indicate a rule for supervision because, like, for instance, if a delegate needed to go back to the dorms or something, they need to have a staff member with them. So no one really had to remember staff members' names. The delegates could just be like, I need a gray shirt to go with me to the dorms. Or make sure you have a gray shirt with you if you go back to the dorms. So it was actually a really functional system, which we probably should replicate during our LAYLF, but we don't necessarily need a motion.
I agree with that, Lillian, and because I'm gonna refer back to Lions Camp. Those people knew that if you had that shirt, that was the nurse. So that was this, that, you know, they all had the same picture on the shirt. Say, I don't know, a lion, but the shirt was a different color.
Yeah, it was really, really useful. Made everything super clear and super straightforward as far as who was who and who needed to be with who as well.
Exactly. And they also had little name tag, like little lanyards with their little name tag, too. But that worked really well because it's also like a personal thing. Like if you just need to go talk to one person, not everybody, and people don't remember names. So if they have a gray shirt, then I know, oh, you're the nurse, or you're this, you're that.
Look, I don't remember anyone's name, so it was nice to be able to just be like, hey, you need a gray shirt with you, because
yes.
Do they not wear like badges?
They did, but sometimes the badges were flipped like around or something
Not
like
to say,
that.
because that, like, having visuals are important too.
Absolutely, and it was nice because every delegate had a backpack as well that had a luggage tag affixed to it that said, okay, this is so-and-so's backpack, or this is so-and-so's backpack. So everyone had things like hand sanitizer and tissues, which were a wildly important item that we underestimated the usefulness of, a notebook, and even a jump drive. So these things were carried around in the backpack. Also, personal items and comfort items that they may have needed throughout the day. So they didn't have to go back to the dorms or carry it around in their hands. So backpacks were pretty great, and so were the tissues as well. The last thing on our takeaways.
Charlie had his hand
raised. Charlie?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay, this may seem a little petty, but I like the idea of the staff and the campers wearing different, I say campers, wearing different color shirts because it's a great visual representation. But I would prefer seeing as part of the orientation for everyone, the recognition that the gray shirt is a staffer. And then rather than referring to make sure you have a gray shirt with you, make sure you have a staffer with you, because I find it just seems to dehumanize the staff members. And I don't, and it's not offensive to me. I just don't know that that's necessarily a great model of behavior and nomenclature. That's just my thought, but I like the idea of the two different colors, but just make it part of the orientation so they know what the difference is.
That's fair. There was it just kind of happened in Oklahoma, but I think that's a great point. So we'll definitely make sure to include that in programming notes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda Kosa.
Brenda Kosa.
She's muted.
Brenda, I think you're muted.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much. Brenda Kose, Parent, Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. I was, when you mentioned the backpacks, I also wanted to highlight the sensory needs of some of the potential attendees, and sensory meaning when you attend national conferences, they in advance in their advertisement, they ask individuals not to wear perfumed colognes and lotions as much as possible. They're also sensitive. They may have something that says, if you're looking at the screen, be mindful for anyone who may have epileptic conditions. If we could include some advanced information for sensory processing.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. And even outside of sensory issues, there are some people who can't tolerate perfumes due to allergy issues, autoimmune issues. So one thing that was really great was at the museum, they actually gave out free like fidgets, and that was really useful for the campers. So anytime campers were provided with any sort of like fidget, that was really beneficial. You get those on the front end as well.
And Oklahoma provided noise canceling headphones for, they were available in all settings for the individuals who felt like the activity, the noise level was too much for them. They had the option to either request it, or the staff would recognize it and offer if they felt like it was something that they could utilize, they'd offer it to them.
That was wildly important.
A lot of kids, a lot of young kids access that.
No, I was gonna mention, like, a lot of these things are, the National YLF has it set up, and they have examples of, like, in the application, like, what are, special things you might need, or that might be helpful to you, and, and then going back to the whole, like, recruitment, it'll tell, this is how, the selection has to take place, so going back and looking at the national examples is helpful too. Anything we can include for that.
Are we on an action item, or can I say something?
Say something. I don't think we're on an action item.
Did you or your mom develop this, brought this? I was gonna say, I think we have a new format. I like this format, Lillian. We'll start using that in the office.
So yeah, I remember.
Are we gonna get a copy of that for the delegates three, or?
A copy of this document?
Yes, for the committee to read.
Yeah, we can definitely send it out. I think this was kind of a last minute sort of decision to put this on the screen specifically. But yeah, huge kudos to Mom for developing this. It was like a week after the forum, and she was like, we really need to get our thoughts down before we forget them. And I was dead from the forum. So
I'm going to get Maddie off the bus, guys.
Okay.
But that wasn't my what I want to say. That was just my say joke. So that was my.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to I was just looking through our Partners in Policymaking Facebook group, and we have incredible graduates who are people with disabilities.
Oh, cool.
If you start seeing the names of the people, they are people that I think would be great speakers And you know, that probably something of them wanting to be able to give back, including Jill Hayne. I heard her say, right. So, yeah.
If you read the schedule, apparently my name is already on there.
Okay, so here's the deal about that schedule. I knew you were gonna give me some credit about this. These are proposed speakers, okay? It's just ideas, it's brainstorming, it's a working document. And if I remember correctly, you were pretty enthusiastic about YLF starting again, so don't.
Jill's like one of the only YLF alumni.
Thank you. But it's a compliment. Bring your mom along.
Erase that from the transcript, please. I wasn't kidding.
Jill, I brought my mom to YLF, so.
You're like 2 decades younger than me.
I mean, look, we're lucky to have mamas, so.
And they like to be needed even when y'all get older.
That's the thing. Bring your mama, Jill.
My mama is a nurse, actually, so I was gonna talk to y'all and like plant an idea in her head, but like my mama is, I mean, by the time we have the YLF, she'll hopefully be a retired nurse. But when y'all were talking, I was gonna actually mention all this to her tonight to see if that's something that sounds interesting to her.
Tell your mama to call me. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, thoughts?
You know who else is a good speaker? Rashad.
So I also put him on
What's on there too?
So these are,
and he's really, he's a really good speaker. And the kids would love him.
It isn't like it's not a voluntold sort of thing. It's like these are great mentors and individuals to speak. So
He is a good one though.
yes.
Yes. We love him.
So the last thing on our takeaway list is also our next part of our next agenda item, which is discussion about a paid coordinator for our pilot year of YLF and beyond. Okay, YLF has a paid coordinator who handles the bulk of planning and scheduling for the YLF. We discussed, YLF in depth with him, and he stated that it took at least 6 months of full-time work to bring YLF to life. And so we discussed with their YLF coordinator and DDC executive director about what it would look like if we didn't versus did hire a coordinator, and they strongly felt that it would be almost impossible to safely, respectfully, and meaningfully bring our YLF to fruition without a paid coordinator. So the thing about having a paid coordinator is it doesn't seem like we can really have a successful YLF without a paid coordinator, because if you think about it, we have scheduling of speakers, ordering of things like backpacks and shirts and etc., lodging, food, scheduling transportation, staffing, interviews for delegates, post surveys, scheduling with universities for research. It's just a lot that I'm not sure we can get accomplished within a committee. So the thing about having a coordinator is we can't have a coordinator without a fiscal agent. Amy, I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you mind kind of explaining how this could work if this is what we decide to do?
Sure. So either paid coordinator or no paid coordinator, you'll still need a fiscal agent because you're going to have multiple funding sources that are all going to need to go to one entity and then pay the YLF bills. So you'll still need a fiscal agent either way. You can, if I'm just thinking about the $30,000 that the DDC is giving to YLF or is putting toward YLF, you could turn around and say that $30,000 is going to be earmarked for a salary for a paid coordinator who works, and then you figure out is it a part-time position? Is it part-time, these months, if it's full-time these months, or however you work that out. We will put out a solicitation for proposals for that fiscal agent. But we need to know how you intend to spend the $30,000 that the council has allocated to this project. And that's what goes into our solicitation of proposals. So then your fiscal agent would be responsible in that regardless. If you have a paid coordinator, your fiscal agent will be the one that's responsible for hiring that person, for paying that person, for making sure that all of your invoicing is accurate through your different streams of funding. So like if PREETS has certain rules that DD Council money does not, you have to make sure that you're billing in the right ways to the right entities. Let's see what I'm missing.
So you'll put out the DD Council will put out a solicitation for proposal and put that information out, like the DD Council has $30,000, but there's given $30,000 for this program, but there's other streams of money potentially, and that the person the entity that's receiving that money has to do X, Y, and Z. Right. But does the DD Council, do we ever say what the salary is for someone, like say for partners? Do we say what the salary is? For the partners coordinator? Well, yeah, it's a part of, it isn't like part of we do work it out with the fiscal agent, what that salary will be, because they invoice it back to us, but we solely fund partners. There aren't other entities doing that. So if this situation is different, there are other entities funding. So if you can take two different streams of funding together to make a salary for your coordinator, then that would be fine as long as your fiscal agent has that worked out. It's not necessarily necessary that our money is what goes to the coordinator salary, or that our money is the only thing that goes to the coordinator's salary, if that makes sense.
And just so that everybody understands, so that any funds that you get from PREETS are going to have to be after the service is provided. So it's going to have to be after the actual event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it'll be a reimbursed cost. And that is how DD Council funding works too for partners. That is, the fiscal agent has to pay for things up front, and then they invoice us and we reimburse. Most money that's filtered from the state is going to work that way.
The feds.
Yeah.
So is it dollar for dollar? Because you have to have some type of fee that those fiscal agents are receiving. Right?
Every vendor that contracts with us, well, the state requires an 8% administrative fee.
Okay.
That fee goes to the the fiscal agent or the vendor.
So it seems like before the request for like your RFP for agency, we need to figure out what they're gonna do with the 30 days. Council, did I hear that correctly?
Oh, could you say it on here?
Yeah, you want to say it loud enough?
I was saying it really quietly in case I had said something really. I wanted to clarify, because Amy had mentioned earlier about how before we have that solicitation proposals for this potential fiscal agents, we need to determine how we're going to distribute the 30K from the DD council. Whether that's to coordinator, transportation, lodging, etc.
How detailed does that have to be, Amy? Like, does it have to be like a line budget kind of thing? Or does it need to be just kind of like a generic, like the 30,000 will be utilized for, like Bambi was saying, okay, these 3 days on the ground with the delegates in addition to a paid coordinator? Like how specific does it have to be?
When we receive solicitations of proposals from different entities, they have to include a budget. For this purpose, the only thing you have to budget out is that 30,000, because that's all the money that the DD council has allocated.
Right.
So that person is basically just saying, here's how we're going to spend the $30,000 that the DD council has given.
So this committee has to say, before you guys can put out the RFP or
Solicitation of proposals,
Okay.
SOP.
This committee has to determine how the 30,000 is going to be spent. To include that in the solicitation of proposal.
It would be easiest, because otherwise then you leave it up to whoever is applying to be the fiscal agent to determine how the money is spent.
And you probably want the fiscal agent to kind of, or in the solicitation, to kind of explain, it's going to cost more than $30,000
Right.
to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So your best case scenario is if you have a fiscal agent that has a lot of capital, just to be honest with you. Because like, for example, with other federal grants that, we have several federal grants in VR or under LRS. And sometimes we have to, like for independent living, sometimes the bills come in before the grant comes in, but we already have other funds to stick in there and then we replace it and all that good stuff. So it's hopefully you can find a fiscal agent who might be able to, for lack of a better way of saying it, upfront the money, and they'll know that they get reimbursed for it, but they'll need to know your budget really isn't going to be 30,000. It's 30,000 from the DDC, but you really need to figure out what is your total YLF budget, if that makes sense.
Everyone's looking at me like, I don't know what to do. So Jill, I see your hand raised.
Melissa can know. Preference what I was getting at. Before we talk about fiscal agents, we need to talk about definitely a budget, and then who are our other contributors, and like how much do they want to give? Like if it's 90,000 to do this first YLF, then we already have 30,000 before we can land on this fiscal agent. We need to figure out where are we getting the other 60,000 from, and then before we even do that, we need to have a concrete budget and how much money definitely do we need? Like, I know that we talked about, because we had Melissa, Julie, and oh my God, what's her name?
What does she do?
Meredith?
Thank you.
I couldn't
You're,
remember.
in February, and I think we need to have more concrete information on budgetary issues.
I think really a huge barrier that we face is that, this is the first time we're having an LA YLF in over 15 years. And other YLFs will not look like our YLF. So we can't just pull Oklahoma's budget and say, okay, this is what it's going to look like. And so it's difficult because it's like you need a budget for, for our funders, but
She's on her way.
But our funders also need a budget. So it's like, where does the original budget come from is the question. The other issue too about pushing back this solicitation of proposals until we have like a solid budget is that the solicitation of proposals will take some time, and so will the hiring of a coordinator. So we will probably need a coordinator by the beginning of next year in order to have a good, fruitful YLF, in order to make this happen in a meaningful way. And this solicitation of proposals and a hiring process could take until the end of this year. So we're in a bit of a pickle. And so Bambi, I see you had your hand raised.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think that this is really for the committee. Like, a committee is that this is what we want. And then it's up to the staff to go back and say, this is what the committee said they want, figure out how they best, I don't know, how do you leverage the federal dollars? How do you leverage other entities, talk to the entities that are potential funders, and then develop this solicitation for proposals. I know I've been on the DD Council for over a decade, and we've never gotten to the details. I don't know how much the coordinator makes. I know what we pay, and I know what the outcome is that we want. I know what we pay for the LeCan, and I know what the outcome is that we want, but we don't really get into the details of all the ins and outs of it. So I think that that's what we need to do, is like the council needs to move forward. Does that make sense, Amy? Am I saying that right?
The issue is that we're not the sole funder. All of those other things we're the sole funder for. So we can make those plans and move forward. But I don't have any authority to work with other entities for them to fund this. Your fiscal agent will have that, but it's not solely a DDC project. So
Can that be, because where we stand right now, you guys are the sole funders, can that be, because I don't know, because I'm completely ignorant about this process, can that be included in that SOP that there is the potential? Because you're saying that the fiscal agent would have that relationship with with all of the funders. So right now, as the sole funder, would you guys be able to do that SOP? And then in that, say there is the potential for additional funders that the fiscal agent would work with. Then that becomes, once the fiscal agent is identified, then that becomes their issue.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
And they'll
Is that
budget
work
for that
around?
amount, and then
Not just as a possibility, is that the DD Council expects whoever the fiscal agent is to develop that funding.
right, yeah, to
That relationship.
build the
that out.
relationships with other funders to seek out
expand it.
Okay.
the funding needed to be able to put the forum on.
Okay, so that sounds like the workaround.
And y'all might not know the answer to this, but do y'all anticipate people responding to the solicitation?
Hopefully.
I mean, I've been in government for a while. Usually you kind of know who might potentially respond. I didn't know if y'all knew of people who were interested in it. Because that'll be another hurdle if you put out the solicitation and you don't.
And nobody responds.
And that's the only reason why I said you might want to have some of the details hashed out. Because some of them may not respond because I don't know what they're getting themselves into.
So could that be a thing? Could that be a thing also where in that SOP, and again, because I'm ignorant about this, that you put that buys time to maybe mock up some sort of like potential, like just kind of a generic broad budget, like as, okay, we've kind of gone through some of these things, maybe kind of do a broad budget, and if that potential fiscal agent would have those questions, so that could be available on request. I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to cover all of it.
So, no, it's not at all. I mean, I think we're all kind of grasping at straws here. So I guess my question to you, Amy, is what do we absolutely need in order to start the SOP process? Like, what's the concrete things that we need that we can't like shave off?
Can I give you the easiest answer?
Sure. You know, I love easy answers.
Please. The easiest answer would be because you have this funding and you know that it exists and is there. And you know, I'm presuming that you want to hire a coordinator, that you say that this 30,000 will be allocated towards a coordinator's salary.
Okay.
And then we will also write in the information about there should be additional funders. The fiscal agent will be responsible for coordinating with those additional funders and understanding those funding sources and bringing that money in and making sure it's invoiced correctly, not just for us, but for Melissa, for Meredith, for whomever else is there.
So here's my follow-up question. If we say this 30K will be allocated towards the coordinator, are we locked into that? Or can that be, if later on we decide that we're gonna allocate it differently, are we gonna get in trouble?
You're locked into, yeah, you'd be locked into it. That 30,000 would have to go to your coordinator.
So you don't want to do, I don't think.
You don't want
lock
to do
it down.
that because your fiscal agent is going to have overhead costs. They're going to have, what we call is indirect costs, like.
Yeah.
This is a stupid question, but can we be vague and say this funding needs to go through the running of a YLF and payment of a YLF coordinator?
Does it do you have to commit to?
And like including costs associated with speakers, you know, like things that would be included.
Whoever answers the solicitation of proposals will have to say, this is what we plan on spending that $30,000 on.
Okay.
So once you have the person, let's just say you have the solicitation, you pick the person.
Mhm.
So at that point, do they contract with the DDC for the 30,000? Or they just are billing you?
Say it again.
So once the fiscal agent is chosen, how do they get paid? Do they have a contract with you? Okay. And so that's when you need to know how the 30,000 is going to be spent, is when you're doing the contract.
But you expect who you select, that they have a plan. That's gonna be part of who you select. If they have done the work to get the other funding. So if John Doe in and says that they have, you know, they know they can get how LRS intends to pay for it and the rates they're going to pay for different things, and they have a nice calculation on that, and they talk to the Department of Education and they have a nice calculation on what the Department of Education can pay for and what they can't, then they can say, so this is how we're going to need to spend the DD Council funding. Because I think the most restrictive funding is going to be your funding. It might, yeah. So that's where, so that will give them, if they've done their job, then they should be able to know what type of umbrella do they need to leave for that $30,000 funding, is my thoughts on it.
But I know what you're saying, Bambi, because, and y'all, I'm not a difficult person, but the Rehabilitation Services
No, it's not
Administration.
Melissa. It's the federal one.
But with something like this though, because it's this program, we'll say, a lot of it will be almost your proposal to us, telling us what you need. And we've talked about the different things that are allocable to pre-employment transition services. And as long as it's reasonable, it should be okay. But we have to know the cost ahead of time to approve the costs to make sure it's in line with what we pay for other things.
So going back to my original question, can we be kind of vague and just say this goes towards speakers, coordinator, areas?
But I think what Bambi's saying, which is a great idea, is basically you tell them the idea of what you're asking for the solicitation for, and you can let them know that there's $30,000 in DDC funding, but then part of their proposal is going to be, you know, we anticipate this much in VR funding, this much in Department of Education funding, and that's their plan. And then you get to look at their plans and see who has the best laid out plan.
Mm-hmm.
Hoping that that's what they do.
Right.
That takes, in that scenario, that takes the legwork off of, you know.
Jill, I see you have your hand raised.
Okay, just to put this in perspective, so we, for partners in family, partners in policy making, Jump Sprinkle Center is the fiscal agent, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And Melissa, not to put you on the spot.
Happens every day, it's fine.
But they didn't what they use, because I know you said this is a pre-ex program, and then this sounds like a pre-ex program. What were you ballparking that, just so it's in the transcript, what were you ballparking that pre-ex could cover?
So that's why I was asking what the schedule was going to be. If I estimate it's going to be 30 hours total, just as an example, and you have 15 participants, hold on. Let's do 30 hours times $50 an hour times 15. That's 22,500. But that's just for, I'll call the instruction. You can also in pre-ex pay for transportation. You can pay for room and board, but those are things, a cost that I would have to know and just make sure that that they're in line with what we pay for other services.
Just kind of.
Okay.
Could be the instruction, could pre-ex instruction funds be used for speakers?
So in VR, and this is good and bad, so it's a fee for, well, it makes it simple, but then it depends on how much your speakers cost. So it's a fee for service, meaning we pay $50 a session. So like with the math I just did, it would be approximately $22,000. Question is, how much does that actually take you to operate? If that makes, it's a really big budget. Like it's a really complicated budget.
But when you say instruction, that instruction is your schedule.
Correct.
So in that schedule, you have your speakers lined up.
Yeah.
So that's part of your.
That's your speakers, that's your supplies for those classes, that's your,
Yeah, that's everything.
Okay.
Sharon Delvesco has her hand raised.
Okay, Sharon.
Hi, just FYI, the chat still isn't working. So, as you guys have been talking, I sent notes in an email to Lillian. I think that it might be feasible or a good idea for you guys to maybe have a smaller group, a subcommittee meet to discuss about the line items in your budget and how to figure that out. And then you're gonna have, it will give you an idea of a bottom line amount at a minimum that you're gonna need in order to pull off the first youth leadership forum or the rebirth of the youth leadership forum. You're
Yeah,
gonna
and
keep
you
spinning
want
in,
to talk about some of that
it
after.
seems like you're spinning in circles right now about we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this, we have to, but we can't do that until we do this first. So I think if you had a smaller group of people come together and try to determine maybe the line items for your budget, like amount to cover sleeping rooms, amount to cover speakers, amount to cover printing, postage, recruitment, whatever. And then that smaller group could come up with something for your big group to review, and it'll give you an idea of what you're going to tell the DD Council you're going to use their $30,000 for, and how much you think you're going to be able to bill LRS for pre-employment transition services. I hope that makes sense to you guys.
It makes sense. I think.
I can't hear you anymore.
Definitely makes sense. I appreciate your input, and I just found your email with the very thorough suggestions, so thank you.
Charlie has his hand raised and so does Joe.
Okay, Charlie?
Yeah, just without belaboring the point, a couple of things that you might want to keep in mind. The solicitation is probably going to be the hardest part of this whole process, because I would caution against being too vague, because if you're too vague, you don't know where everybody's going to go. The other thing is, when you do that, if we're going to have people coming up with a plan, which is a great idea, there needs to be a rubric that is going to accompany the solicitation so that people kind of know what at least they're going to be scored on. So that's one of the things. The other thing is, and I don't know, I'm kind of confused on the funding. I know that there's 30 from DD Council. There might be some from State Department of Ed, some from VR. God, I'm losing it. But the thing is, there needs to be a definitive amount, or at least a range of an amount in there, because being a fiscal agent for a $30,000 grant might appeal to some people, but being a fiscal agent for a $100,000 grant might not appeal to them. So, and then the other thing is, you want to build into that something about not the reputation, but the qualifications of the people applying, because there's a problem that nobody would apply. That's always an issue. But there's a bigger problem if the wrong people apply and they look really good on paper, but they don't have any experience with any of the facets that we're looking at. Or worse, they do have experience and it's bad. So we want to make sure, in my opinion, that we have something built in there that would allow y'all to disqualify anyone because they don't meet this certain criteria. So that's just some thoughts, because I'm telling you, the solicitation is probably going to be the most important part of the process, because it is a bear to write those things and to get them correct. And there's a fine line between being vague and being ineffective. So you just really want to be very careful.
Thank you,
I'm gonna
Charlie.
leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can, I don't know. Can, Lillian and Amy work on another draft budget and like we send it out to like the committee members by like next Wednesday or something, or I don't know.
So let me just clarify something. So you were complaining that I've all told you to do speaking earlier, and now I'm just telling me that I gotta do the budget.
Wait, what? No,
I know how you
no.
feel.
I'm just,
No, I was just making sure. I'm cool with speaking, like, of course, people love to hear me talk.
that's the truest statement that anyone has made throughout this entire committee meeting.
Yeah, right.
It's true. I've never met anyone who does not love Jill Hano, and that is a fact.
Lillian, can you get a copy of the Oklahoma budget? Because even though it's not gonna be your budget, it's good to know everything that you need in your budget. And I can tell you, if you can give me that, I can tell you what we can pay for.
I can forward that to you right now.
Cause like in pre-ed, if you keep it within people who are eligible for pre-eds, I can pay for books, tools, training materials necessary to participate. I can pay for any of the ADA accommodations that a person would need to participate.
Wow, that's a big one. That's good.
Can you send that to me too,
Yes.
Amy? And where are you finding all these people that love them some Jill Hano?
Really?
I can't find anyone to love me.
So you have a room full of people that love you right here. Yeah.
Although, can I ask Melissa a question?
Sure.
Where is there a link on your website, like just all about pre-ed and
I'm
like?
on it. Yes, I'm on it right now. So let me.
Can you send me the link?
Yes.
Okay. Y'all know how I love to read. I have no life and my job just closed down, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I'm here.
What?
Maddie, here.
Oh, hey Maddie, it's good to see you.
Hey, Maddie, thank y'all so much.
So it seems like we have a lot of work to do, and we still have one other agenda item
Do you
with,
want to look at the schedule?
we only have 17 minutes.
Okay.
And since it already seems to be a contentious topic, we may want to, here's my poll. So here's what I'm thinking. We schedule another YLF committee meeting for maybe next month to finalize the schedule. And in the meantime, Amy, I apologize for voluntolding you in present tense. Maybe you and I can get together and kind of draft the budget.
Okay.
And then so then.
My bad.
No, Jill, it's okay. I did that to you with the schedule. So that next meeting, we can finalize schedule, look at the budget, and since we'll have enough budget, we'll have an idea of where that 30K will come from, and then we can get that SOP process started. So we can possibly have a fiscal agent and coordinator by the end of the year, so we can have YLF for summer of 2023. Does that sound like a solid plan to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. We have 3 race teams.
Yeah, I don't, Sharon and Charlie, I'm not sure if their hands were just still up or if it was, okay, they both went down. So, Karonda Corley.
Okay. Karonda?
Y'all know when the meeting is next month?
Not yet. We just decided that 2 seconds ago, so that's to be determined. Karonda, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, if my memory recalls, we're supposed to have a budget committee for the DD Council. So if you're trying to iron out issues as it relates to a budget for YLF, it would go to the budget committee. And if our DD council don't have a budget committee, then it would be prudent of us to actually get the budget committee ASAP. So I think that that's something that we may need to look at. Our ED could look at that along with the chairperson, but that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. In the meantime, I think we really need to get a budget pulled together for YLF so we can start that SOP process. So I think we can stick to the plan of perhaps getting the draft budget drafted before the next committee meeting and having it before the YLF committee. And then we'll talk about finalizing the schedule, looking at the budget and what the SOP process should look like. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Maddie, thumbs up, thumbs down. Awesome. Cool.
I'm seeing about getting more members on our committee.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, we probably need more diversity on our committee as far as self-advocates and people of color. I know some of our committee members weren't in the room at the time. So we had discussed perhaps our YLF committee, keeping their eyes and ears out for any potential committee members that would be a good fit for our committee. So if you guys can do that over the next couple of months, that would be phenomenal. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or really good jokes? Awesome. Jill, please tell your mama to call me. And can we, okay, public comment is next, the last thing on the agenda before adjournment.
No hands are raised.
Awesome. Can we have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
Our motion by Bambi.
We have a second? Okay. Seconds, and then any objections or abstentions? Thank goodness. All right, thank you guys. No objections, abstentions, or motion to adjourn passes. Thank you all for your hard work. We will see you guys very soon.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Love
You definitely need a coordinator just to do the. Tell me about it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.